On there? It's hard to tell. There it is. Sorry about that, guys. Hey, greetings. What is up? And welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. As always, I'm Cole, joined by my brother from another mother. I think I used that one before. Jay, esteemed colleague, then friend, homie, amigo, etc. We're sorry about last week's show getting canceled. Obviously, that wasn't the plan, and we were really going to try to salvage last week and reschedule, but it just didn't work out. Mostly because of me. I was having sort of a bad week health-wise and stuff, and I was hoping, I'd feel better. I didn't feel better. I felt worse as the week went on, so it's just like, we'll just have to scrap the episode and move on. So sorry about that, guys. But we're glad to join you now this week for an episode on a little body horror for you. It was inevitable, I think, that we'd eventually get around to the work of David Cronenberg.
The first Canadian film we've done on here.
Yeah, I believe so. I think I guess it is. Yeah, of course. Yeah, famed Canadian director David Cronenberg, and this is his 1983 film Videodrome, starring James Woods. I go back and forth whether or not I think this is his best film. It's definitely in the top 3 for me. It's way up there.
What else would you put
one
up there?
a lot. That is a good question. What else would I put up there?
Only because he's probably one of my favorite directors.
Right. I like The Brood an awful lot because it's just so crazy. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it does get a little more tough. Sometimes it's Naked Lunch, and sometimes it's not. It's funny. I kind of have a weird love-hate relationship with Naked Lunch, and it really depends on my mood with Naked Lunch. Like, sometimes I watch it, and I'm like, oh, so cool. And other times I'm watching it, I'm just like, what am I, I'm really schizophrenic about Naked Lunch. Like,
I can understand
that. It's definitely sort of a moody movie. But I definitely think at its core, it's kind of brilliant in a way, especially when you know about the novel that it's based on, and then about William S. Burroughs and how meta they make everything, because it's not just the book that they tap into, but they also tap into some stuff Burroughs himself did in real life and stuff, and it's all pretty cool from that perspective. So yeah, I guess those maybe are the 3. But yeah, it's actually very hard for me to rank his movies. Somebody like Carpenter, it's easy. I'm just like, I thought about it. It's a lot harder for me with somebody like him, to tell you the truth. I think it ebbs and flows a lot. Even something as primitive as like Shivers, I really, really like.
Me too.
Like, that's a movie that doesn't have much of a plot, that is only in one area, doesn't even have real actors in it, and yet I just think is done so well and is so original and cool that I really hold it in high regard, even though it's sort of just a small budget movie and stuff with not a lot going on. So yeah, I mean, all I know is, like, the one movie I don't really like is, and it's not like it's a bad movie. It's just like, for all of his movies that do like weird, disturbing stuff, the only one that really bothers me and disturbs me is Crash, and I just have to veer away from Crash. It bothers me so much, but that doesn't mean because it's a poor movie. It's just, it pushes my buttons in a way that, like, I can't even see it objectively. It just upsets me. So all I know is that my favorite one isn't Crash.
I generally flip-flop between either Videodrome or Dead Ringers.
See, I just recently rewatched Dead Ringers. I hadn't seen it in years and years and years and years. And it's funny, like, how bad my memory of it was. Like, I had forgotten so much of it. I'd even filled in scenes that weren't there and stuff. Like, when I watched it, I was like, wow, like, it's definitely an interesting movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the dual role by Jeremy Irons.
Mm-hmm.
He does a pretty good job of convincing you that it's like 2 different people with 2 different personalities and stuff like that. It's pretty cool, and you gotta love a movie like that, because, like, even when you're halfway through, you're still not really sure what the plot is supposed to be. Yeah. You're like, what's gonna happen? What's going on here and stuff? But it keeps your attention right to the end, I guess, is the main thing. So yeah, that's actually just before Videodrome. That's the most recent Cronenberg movie I watched, because I found it was on the TMN Go that I've got access to again.
That's cool.
And actually, yeah, this is the first time that I've seen Videodrome quite a few times with you. This is the first time I think I've seen it in, like, high def, and it looked really good.
It does. It looks really good. The Criterion Blu-ray they put out a few years ago looks really good, but some of the practical effects, see some of the seams there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just how it is.
This is another one of those movies where I talk about movies where I had a chance to buy it and I didn't. Like, the Criterion of that is another movie I've held in my hands, I can't tell how many times, and debated whether or not I was going to finally put the money out, and then, you know, couldn't justify it or decided to get something else. Like, at least 4 or 5 times over the years where I've like, today is the day that I buy this, and then I don't for whatever reason, because, you know, wherever I was looking at it, be like $40, like close to 50 with tax and stuff, which, I mean, it's still a movie I would really like to own that thing of, but, you know, it's a lot to justify.
Sure.
You have other priorities and stuff. So otherwise, you know, I'd have a lot more Criterions than I do. The Criterion Special Edition Blu-ray that I own right now, the first one I have is Brazil, which I'm very proud and happy to have. But yeah, definitely wanted to get a few more. I think I was saying to Jay, actually the last one I saw in store was a movie I'd never even seen before. Oh no, it wasn't a Criterion. It was an Arrow release. But an Arrow release for obviously here, because it would have been this region. And it was for an early 70s British zombie movie called Psychomania, about like zombie, like a satanic gang that like kills themselves and come back as zombies. I'd never even seen it. I'd only heard of it. But like, I thought the Arrow release was so beautiful. Like, I was gonna almost pay like $40 just to have that. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't just spend that money on a movie I've never even seen. But the pull was strong. I really wanted to buy it. I really did. I'll just make sure I see the movie.
It's. I only have a few Criterion Blu-rays because they are so expensive, but it's really good. I think I've got that one. I've got Kronos and Repo Man. I think are the only ones that I actually have. It's kind of unfortunate because I really like them. They're just really pricey.
Yeah, I have a few like used DVDs of Criterions, but they're more for like foreign ones that like didn't get like big sets or anything like that. I have a few Japanese movies like that, but these aren't big like Akira Kurosawa ones. These are lesser known ones and stuff like that. And that's another thing. I obviously would love to own like the Criterion of like Seven Samurai, but it's so expensive. Man, it's like $60 or something. So
was it? Did Criterion put out a whole Kurosawa box set?
I bet they did. That sounds like. I'm pretty sure I read about that.
I think a friend of mine had that, and I borrowed it years ago, and it's really good. I want to say it's Criterion. There's so much special features.
I'm pretty sure it is because they put out other. Actually, the box set I really want to get, even more than Kurosawa, is the lesser known. There's a few different box sets, of what's his name? I can't remember his first name, but his name is Ozu. He was it earlier. He made films before Kurosawa. He made films. Actually, he even made silent films, but most of them were lost. Ozu, and he made them right up to the 60s. And yeah, I remember they had a few box sets. One was called Early Ozu, one was like Later Ozu. And he just did like sort of slow plotting dramas, but he was a very influential filmmaker in his day about his camera placement and all that technical stuff that I really got into as I got older and stuff. So I'm pretty sure they did that. So they must have done it for Kurosawa, I would imagine.
Oh, this is the guy that did Good Morning?
It's the guy that did like a whole bunch of like actually ones that had very similar titles. Like he had Early Spring, Late Autumn. He's also most famously he did Tokyo Story, right? Tokyo Story is the big one. That's the one that you see on a lot of lists when they make lists of greatest films of all time. Tokyo Story is always on there. I've seen it and I like it very much, but I like some of his other ones. I've seen maybe 4 of his, and there's a bunch I still need to see. But yeah, I
believe I'm familiar with some of those films. I haven't seen them, but I've heard of some of those films.
Yeah, well, they're cool. They're very just normal dramas. Like his films were basically just about ordinary people living ordinary lives. Was really what it was. They weren't period pieces. They weren't action-y things. They weren't supernatural. They were just basically about usually family units and stuff. I really liked Early Spring, which is just about this this man who like works at an office and winds up having an affair with one of his coworkers and stuff. I mean, just all very normal, understated stuff, but just so well done. But yeah, so it's Yasuhiro Ozu would be his name, and he's just one of the great filmmakers. And I think someday, just because I like getting into this stuff, maybe we will even do one of his movies.
Sure.
I love talking about the masters, and he's definitely one of them for sure. And I always like to bring him to the conversation if people talk about Kurosawa. I'm like, well, before Kurosawa, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, what's too bad, yeah, it's like this guy was making films in the silent era, but most of those are now lost.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. Like, he made a ton of movies. And he had, like, a really weird, depressing life. He, like, never got married and lived with his mother till she died and stuff. And,
Oh, wow.
like, his whole life was just, like, making movies. Like, he didn't do anything. Like, he didn't travel. He didn't have friends, really. Like, he just made movies was pretty much his life. And at least he was really good at it. But yeah, very...
Died of
very,
cancer.
Yeah. Very influential guy, so that remains something to look down the road at, maybe, for sure.
Sure.
But yeah, getting back to this film. So this Videodrome came out in '83. So this is, I think it's at least the signature film. I think maybe for Cronenberg, in that I think it's the one that most people think of, or if they think of that style, I think. He'd done, like, even though he'd done body horror before, this is like a one that more people saw. Like, not a lot of people have seen The Brood, not a lot of people have seen Shivers and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people have seen this. I think there's plenty of people, maybe just because James Woods was a name they recognize, and I'm sure there were plenty of people back in the day did not know what they were in for watching this movie, and they're like, what the fuck is that? You know, when the stuff starts happening. I mean, if you want to talk about a movie that just sort of suddenly, you know, doesn't give you any warning of what's going to happen and then just turns, like, this is a great example of it.
Oh, it's so great. But I mean, if you look at, you know, James Woods is in this. If you look at who all he was working with around that period of time, like Goldblum was in The Fly. And,
Sure.
Let's see, who else did he have? I'm trying to think who was in Rabid, but you know, just lots of great actors he was working with around that period of time. Of course, Jeremy Irons in Dead Ringers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think James Woods is really perfect for this role of Max, because he's playing sort of, you know, a cynical, almost semi-sleazy type guy, which is, you know, really fits into his wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of James Woods, so this film goes right along with that.
Yeah, me too. Like, I know that he's probably not like the greatest person. I know he does and says annoying stuff, but I just mean as an actor, I enjoy the hell out of him too. I've always enjoyed him as an actor.
I try not to listen to what actors have to say about things that aren't film, just because you know, it'll totally turn you off their whole work. You know, like, oh, you're a Looney Tune. Okay, I'm just
yeah. Especially when you find out, like, when they're Scientologists and stuff like that, you're like, them too. They got them too. You know, but that's a whole thing. But yeah, so yeah, and this is a Canadian production. Obviously, has some American talent like James Woods in there. But another thing that I've always thought was sort of refreshing about Cronenberg, and it's the same thing with Dead Ringers, is that both films are not just shot in Toronto, but set in Toronto. Like, it's not Toronto posing as an American city or anything like that. It's not a big deal, and I realize it doesn't matter. But for a Canadian like myself, it is kind of nice that they're not trying to hide it. They're saying, oh, look, Canada exists too, and stuff happens there too, right? So this is in Toronto. There's references to Toronto. You even see the CN Tower and a few other landmarks at points. So they're not trying to cover it up. It's a Toronto station. Actually, Christopher Walken, The Dead Zone. And that was around the same time.
That was the next movie, was The Dead Zone.
Right.
Sorry, I was just saying. I left him out when I was trying to talk about all the actors.
Yeah, no problem. And shit, although I did derail did knock me off track. No, I was going to say about Canadian cities, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I was going to say the name of the station that he has is actually a parody of a real station that existed in Toronto at the time called City TV. Yeah. And City TV actually did the same sort of stuff that his did, and that it was small and it was a little small, like, UHF station. And sort of to justify its existence and stuff, it showed, like, softcore porn and stuff, because that was, you know, what you couldn't get. So for people that are younger or just, you know, not aware of the history and stuff like that, like, the television landscape in the early 80s was obviously a lot different than it is now. And some of the major themes that are in this movie, they seem kind of antiquated now, specifically if you're talking about, well, just the idea that television is the main medium the primary medium, media influences humans. That's a bit antiquated by today's standards with all that's happened since. But right at the time, that was the case and stuff. And I don't want to harp too much on this or go too far down the rabbit hole. But I mean, one of the primary influences for this movie was the theories and works of Marshall McLuhan, who actually was a professor at university that Cronenberg studied under, and he was very influenced by him. Marshall McLuhan is one of Canada's premier intellectuals, and he's been very celebrated and stuff. He died a long time ago. He actually died before the movie came out. He died. He wasn't very old, but it's too bad that whenever a lot of people like Sartre or stuff like that, or Nietzsche, it's funny how often they'll get like reduced to like one quote, which is kind of silly, especially when it sort of takes things out of context, particularly like Nietzsche, right, and stuff like that. But like in the case of McLuhan, if you want the one quote that might register with people that the name doesn't mean anything to, well, it's the medium is the message. You might have heard that before. It originated with him. Certainly a lot of Canadians would know it, especially Canadians of my age, because we grew up watching TV that had those a part of our heritage moments. Commercials that all had things, and it included one about the life and work of McLuhan, which included like a reenactment of him like lecturing at university and talking to his students, and like at some point and like having the epiphany and be like, no, the medium is the message and stuff. And so that's what people sort of take away from that. But yeah, so I don't want to go too deep in this, and it's not like I'm any sort of expert. Actually, I have one of his books. I have what is it, the Gutenberg. The Gutenberg, whatever the hell it is. It's not the Gutenberg Bible, is it? I'll come back to it. But anyway, I have his book, and I've never read it. I've had it for years. It's just one of those books I never got around to reading and stuff. But I mean, anyway, for those who don't know, like his primary work was sort of analyzing media and how it's evolved and how it's affected us. And he was very smart and influential, and he predicted all sorts of stuff way before it happened. He's also the guy that coined the term global village. He did in the early 60s, and that is very much, the world as we live in now. He also foresaw the internet well before the internet happened, and he was already talking about in the early 60s using the term global village. What he meant, of course, was that even though the world was big and full of different countries that were very spread out, we were becoming more and more connected with each other through media, where, in previous centuries and stuff like that, we were cut off from each other and had to go far on boats. But now we lived in an age where people in Japan could talk to people in America and, all that sort of stuff and influence each other. And as I said, he foresaw what would eventually become the internet, although he never lived to see it, which is really too bad, because he was pretty much bang on about this idea of computer networks connecting everybody and everybody being able to communicate and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, so he had, so anyway, it's hard to boil down the medium is the message, but what it sort of means is that, like, things like the media, like television, radio, whatever they are, and of course nowadays the internet and everything like that, what he meant was those things, as they became more pronounced in our lives and became so ingrained, that whatever sort of content we were being exposed to through them, it wasn't just the content itself that was getting through. There was a little bit of the medium itself that was buried into it. There was no other way to do it. You watch a music video, you judge it and you react to it in the way that you would, because of the stuff that's ingrained in you, your responses to anything that's in sort of a video format. I don't want to get too heavy on this, but that's kind of what he meant. That, like, there was sort of no way for content to come through completely purely now. It was all tied up in what the medium was, whatever it was. And as I said, it's too bad he didn't live, because he would have been thrilled, I guess, maybe, I don't know, to see proven so right in this world that we live in. Because a lot of the themes, again, we're going to see in this movie, where they're talking about people being glued to the screens and always needing to see, different content to shake things up and more shocking. Well, I mean, that is kind of the world we live in now, especially with the internet. Like, years and years and years ago, let's say you wanted to see, I don't know, a bunch of hot women have sex with a donkey or something like that. I mean, you could only dream of it, but now it's only a few clicks away and stuff. And not everything has to be perverted and stuff, but I just mean if you can think about it nowadays, you're probably going to find a video or something about it, something that, you know, in another world or years ago in the past was just inaccessible. It's like, well, you could dream of it. Even if it was something you knew was something that was real, it was far away. You weren't going to find it. But now we can find these things, and we can see these things, whether they're depraved or whatever and stuff like that. I mean, you know, they're trying their best to regulate stuff on the internet. Like if you wanted to find things with like real violence and stuff, that's a little trickier. But still, I mean, apart from that, even stuff that's like semi-legal, there's almost no end to what you can access and stuff. So there's a lot of those sort of themes in this movie, although this is well before the internet comes to being. And yeah, so a lot of it is based on theories and ideas of Marshall McLuhan, basically about how ingrained it's become in our consciousness, the way we absorb content, and especially the fact that like through television and then of course later and stuff like this nowadays, how we're almost bombarded by it, and it just seeps into every facet of our daily lives and ourselves. And that's so that's really what's going on here and stuff. And you know, when he has like a line about how there's a line in one of his books, I think, it's Gutenberg Galaxy, sorry. In the book Gutenberg Galaxy, which came out in 1962, he has a line that says something like, all media are an extension of us, of human senses, our bodies, and our minds. And this movie basically takes that very literally.
Yes, exactly.
Really. So I really think that's the line that stuck the most, probably with Cronenberg when he set out to make this movie, which of course he wrote too. And I know the other Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you said that Cronenberg was a student of his, right? At Toronto University?
I believe it was, University of Toronto. Who he lectured all sorts of different places, too. He became very much a kind of an en vogue, almost sort of intellectual celebrity. And he was asked on to talk shows and stuff, and he was asked to lecture here and there. And there was a while where, he was very in the now. And actually, he had a book years after his death in '89 that was published. And when that came out, it sort of caused like sort of a new boom of interest in him and stuff like that. And I know that like Wired magazine once honored him and said that like he was like the godfather of like everything they're about and stuff like that. So, you know, for certain circles, he's still very much a huge prominent figure, almost a god. But yeah, I've got one of his books. I think it is the Gutenberg Galaxy somewhere, where I've had it for years and I've never read it. But it's something I think about every once in a while that, I should read that.
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably not the best reading. I mean, it's probably a little boring at parts, but.
Well, I'm sure, it can get pretty heavy. Like I said, you can even just look up stuff on Wikipedia and you can see some of his quotes and stuff like that. But
I mean, that's crazy. He was so, able to tell, because I mean, like you were saying, the global, what is it? The global village. That's like nail on the head of how it is right now.
Yeah, and some of the stuff that Tim Leary came up with, he said he kind of took directly from Marshall McLuhan too. So it wasn't all drugs.
Yeah.
Because they actually sort of knew each other. I think that they met a few times and stuff, and I can't remember what it was now, but yeah, there's some sort of famous quote of Leary's that he said, I more or less just sort of took that from
wow.
him, but anyway, and also in this movie, there's a character who is a parody of McLuhan, as we'll get into. Oblivion. The character Oblivion is just sort of a send-up, like a loving parody of Marshall McLuhan, because also the idea that he wouldn't appear in person anywhere, but he'd only be on TV, through TV, is this paraphrasing of something Marshall McLuhan once said, where he said he wouldn't appear like in person on television, but he would appear, on a screen or something, which is kind of funny. But, yeah. So, for those people that aren't familiar with him, we'll touch on it again. He's a cool guy to look up. Just Wikipedia and stuff like that, maybe, and stuff. Or if you're really into it, again, he's written several books. They're all very celebrated and interesting books, so might be something to look into. But I was going to say, so the other primary source of inspiration for this movie besides him was that Cronenberg said that growing up, being of the generation he is, he can remember back when in Canada you really didn't get too many channels. and there was only like a very few. There'd be like, you know, just a couple channels, and then they would go off the air at night, which plenty of Americans of a certain age can relate to too. They can remember a day where, you know, we didn't have this 24-hour cycle. Even I can remember I'm not that old, can remember certain stations signing off and going off the air after like 2 a.m. sometimes and stuff like that. But anyway, when he was a kid, he remembered that like sometimes late at night after the normal stations had gone off the air, if he fiddled around with his TV and antenna enough, he could sometimes get the signal from the US. I think it was Buffalo or something. And he could get stations there, but they're all kind of scrambling. He watched that. And like years later, he thought about the idea of somebody, you know, finding sort of like a hidden kind of channel. And that's where some of the inspiration for Videodrome is too.
Yeah, I always had friends that said they could, you know, get Playboy, you know, and stuff with satellite dish, and, you know, people that could get, you know, TV from all over the world. It's really crazy that, you know, you could do stuff like that back then. But
yeah, there was a couple times during sleepovers where I think we experimented, but you could never get anything consistently. Like one night we'd find a channel that was sort of scrambled, and we'd watch it just because it was in between the channels and stuff, but then we could never ever find it again. It was gone.
Yeah.
I can't, it's not like, we never found anything good. I can't remember ever finding anything that was like, oh, this is amazing. It was just like, it was weird because it was like, we were way, and like, it used to be, you know, the channels ended at a certain number, and we were way up, and suddenly stuff was sort of coming through, you know, and that was kind of neat and exciting.
Yeah, I always heard, you know, urban legends of, oh, so-and-so was able to get this, you know, great stuff, you know, whether it be, you know, an uncut horror movie or, you know, porno or whatever. But, and always those stories. I never actually saw any of it, but I heard stories and had these huge, you know, 10-foot diameter satellite dishes everywhere.
Yeah.
If people can remember those, they're now about like this big. If you see a satellite dish, that it used to be massive. And correct me if I'm wrong. This was this a like a public access type cable channel that Max Wren was running?
I'm not sure. I think they just say that it was just sort of small time
Civic TV, but kind of like a sleazy, like they specialize in sleazy type stuff.
Yeah, as I said, it was a parallel of a real world station that was like a small station in Toronto, and yeah, the 5 they showed like sleazy content and stuff like that because that was, you know, what separated them. That was City TV back in the day.
Well, we were talking about before the show. They showed some of the. It was like some Japanese softcore porn that was too soft.
Yeah, Samurai Dreams. Yeah. And he said it was too soft. It wasn't good enough for him and stuff. I just remember too that McLuhan also has like one of the most random like cameos in all of film, where he just shows up in the Woody Allen movie Annie Hall.
Oh wow!
Where like people are like standing around and somebody's like talking about something he said, and suddenly he's there and he goes, "You know nothing of my work." So yeah, the person that says "you know nothing of my work" in that movie is actually him as himself, which I have no idea what the circumstances that led to him being in that movie, but it's kind of funny because I mean I saw that movie years and years, and you know I didn't know that was him. I don't know.
Sure.
But yeah, I think this is a really great role for James Woods. It's you know, like he's not a bad guy. He's a bit of a sleaze, but I mean, you know, he's a more or less okay normal person and stuff, and. I like how it's shot. You know, it's early 80s. It has that 70s, early 80s feel. It's sort of gritty and grimy in the city. And Toronto can be just as dingy as, you know, New York or Chicago and stuff like that. And I like that. So when I said about the movie looking good in HD, it's not like it's a beautiful visual movie. It's not. It's just what it shows. I just like how it comes through. Because most of it is just sort of, inner city. You know, it's like, you know, it's not terrible urban decay, but it's, you know, just kind of ugly, dingy urban surroundings and stuff. And also like a lot of the people and, you know, they fit into the environment too. Like I remember where he's standing in the line with like the homeless people get to go into like the shelter and they're all like babbling their stuff and saying like vulgar things and stuff like that. Like everybody in the movie kind of reflects a little bit like his content. Everything is kind of sleazy. Everything is kind of trashy. Everything is, you know, nothing's pretty. Nothing's pure.
The one guy that's running his television off of a battery.
Yeah.
I need some change for my battery.
Yeah. I think the movie has some really great sets. Like, I really like his apartment. I like the layout. I like his weird, like, whatever they are, glass walls and stuff like that. It really does look like the type of place a guy like that would live in and stuff. So I think it's a pretty well thought out environments. I like some of the sets. Movie also has Deborah Harry, not really an actress by trade, but of Blondie fame. But she's not blonde in the movie, so it throws you off a little bit.
You know, I didn't know that was her for years, and
Yeah.
you know, obviously probably her blonde hair that I didn't know it was her.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she does a great job in here. I really think
Yeah,
she's underused.
yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a shortish movie. You probably could have used a little more stuff with her before she disappears.
Yeah, she basically just is a fantasy for him. You know, after about a third through the movie, she just kind of shows up on random televisions.
Yeah. So he's a little bit of setup, I guess. He's the CEO of this sort of small cable station, you know, just scraping by, trying to get by and stuff. And he's always on the lookout for something new that he can put out there so that he can get a bit of an edge on the competition. Because we're just entering the age now where people are starting to have like more channels and more options. This was sort of still kind of a new thing in the early '80s and stuff, right? And he supposedly, at first, it seems inadvertently by accident, stumbles across, like we said, like using pirate broadcasts of this weird show calling itself Videodrome. That at first the signal seems to originate from Malaysia, and then later the guy, his technical guy says, actually, you know, that's just a smokescreen. It's actually the signal's coming from Pittsburgh. And he's like, Pittsburgh? And the show just seems to be this weird sort of snuff style thing where it just seems to be various people, usually women, and just this background wall, and then like being like assaulted and tortured and eventually murdered by hooded figures. And he's sort of captivated by it. And he's saying, yeah, this could be the future. And he's just saying, it's great. Like, you got no production values. There's no writers and stuff. There's no plot. There's no locations or music. It's just this. And it gives the people what they want down to, like, you know, boiled down to, like, the purest form, violence, just for the sake of violence. So he's sort of impressed by it and wants to find out more about it and see if he can get it so that he can broadcast it on his own station. And he says to somebody even later on, he's like, I think this is the future. You know, it just sort of shows, even at that point in the early '80s, kind of how cynical we become as a society. Like, okay, we're absorbing all this content and all this stuff, and our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, here's what's going to appeal to people now. Here's the next level stuff. Just like people being tortured and murdered with no actual plot going on. And, of course, it turns out to be even weirder than that as things go on, this being a Cronenberg movie. But at first, that's what's going on. He wants to find out where it's from and stuff. And he goes on a talk show where the talk show host lambasts him, saying, you know, oh, do you feel like you're contributing to the downfall of society and stuff by showing the content you say? And of course, he's completely unapologetic about it. And that's what we're introduced to, not on the show himself, but appearing on a TV screen on the show. What is it, Brian Oblivion? Anyway, Dr. Oblivion, this, I don't know, self-proclaimed, I don't even know what he calls himself, really. What's he supposed to be? Like some sort of prophet? I don't know, but some sort of guy that has all these ideas about philosophy and media and society and stuff. And he's talking about it. And it's there that he also meets the woman and asks her out and finds out that she's into S&M and stuff like that. And of course, so once he shows her Videodrome, she's totally turned on by it and thinks it's a great thing. And she's like, I want to be on this. Like, I want to audition. She's like, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah, I like how it's they go out to dinner, they come back, and she immediately wants to watch like porno and S&M, and then wants to get cut like all in the course of, like 60 seconds. It's like, man,
yeah,
she's not wasting any time, is she?
I think people that are into that are probably like that, though. They're like pretty direct. Like, they don't ease you into it. They're like, all right, this is what I'm into, you know? And he's at least a bit intrigued. And at first, you know, he's like piercing her with the needle and stuff, and he seems okay with that. But yeah, she obviously wants to go to a level that he's uncomfortable with. There's a later part where, you know, she goes to burn herself with a cigarette, and he's like, "Don't do that," but she
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, maybe find something that doesn't like scar your body as much. Like find a way to hurt yourself without causing like long-term scarring.
Mhm. But of course, body horror is the and that's just the warm up for the body horror
Yeah, that's
to come,
sure.
of course.
And then you know, she has like scars all along her collarbone area where she's
Yeah.
been. Other suitors have been cutting her with their Swiss Army knives, apparently.
So there's different ways, of course, to view the movie and interpret the movie, because obviously it talks about hallucinations, and it's supposed to be one of the side effects is if you watch Videodrome enough, you'll start to hallucinate stuff. And so you can debate, or you can, you know, decide for yourself exactly how much of it is hallucination, or at what point does he start, and stuff like that, or like how real are the hallucinations? Does it actually give you the ability to, you know, bend reality? Like that's all sort of up for grabs in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that
Well, there's no
maybe the
real
stuff
answer
he's
to the
seeing,
question.
there's no real answer all the way up to the ending and stuff. So there's a certain point where like only the first 15 minutes are for sure. Then after that, you kind of have to like decide like for yourself whether or not it's hallucination, if it's partial hallucination, or if his hallucinations, there's something that's within Videodrome that doesn't just make you hallucinate, but makes you actually able to, like, as I said, like affect reality in the way that he starts affecting it, and some of the other people do. And
Well, it's all from the perception of Max Wren. So
right.
you don't know if what you're seeing is real or if it's an hallucination or both, or which is a really interesting way to take it, because you're left with nothing but questions.
Yeah.
So it's all up to your interpretation. I think most people would probably say that the entire time he was just hallucinating, all of that stuff. Is probably what most people would say, but in the world of Cronenberg, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's even a line where she says something like, your life could become 100% hallucination at one point. So that they kind of hinted that too. But I mean, yeah, you can take what you want from the movie. You could actually believe that the stuff he's seeing is actually at least partially real too. I mean, it certainly is to the extent of shooting people and stuff. Now, whether or not he shoots people with an ordinary gun or a gun he took from his own body and stuff.
The gun he took out of his stomach vagina.
His stomach vagina, which he does fuck with the gun at first. Because guns are great phallic symbols.
Oh yeah.
And stuff, but
that's the first thing he does with it, actually.
Yeah, it's the first thing he does.
That's hilarious, man. I think when you say Cronenberg, I think most people think of that scene in particular, him sticking the gun into his vagina stomach.
Yeah, very much so.
Because it's a great effect.
So yeah, after Nikki, that's the girl that he met. She doesn't come back from Pittsburgh. She seems to disappear, and that makes him really worry at first that like, these people are sinister. Because when he asked a woman that it was like a low-grade pornographer, he asked her what she knew about Videodrome, and she said she'd find out, and she's the one that tells him at first, And again, this is before all the really weird stuff starts happening. First, we're just wondering what Videodrome is, and she's saying, that's not actors, that's like real. They really are like killing people. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. It's too risky, and it would cost. It's like it's easier just to fake it. And she's like, yeah, well, it's not about that. It's about having a philosophy. And he's like, what the fuck, And so first, you still think the movie's like more like about uncovering what the heck, what's going on here. And it's like, it's like some sort of ring of criminals that do snuff films, but it's actually much weirder than that.
Yeah, that's how it is presented to begin with. That he's found this secret channel, but you come to find out that he's been a part of this experiment.
Right, and she says how it's like the public face of some sort of political movement, when she's just like, what the hell does that mean, And, yeah. So then when he, I like the place where Brian Oblivion is, too. It's like this mission where they, like, help the homeless people, but they also make the homeless people watch TV. And they tell them to watch as much as they can. It's kind of like the idea, because, like, the vision that the Oblivion had was, like, this world where, like, television replaces like every single facet of life, where where it's like a total immersion and stuff. And yeah, that's where you. And at first, he wants to meet him because that's the name that came up when he talked to the woman. She said, "Oh, ask Brian Oblivion. He knows about Videodrome." So he goes there and he talks to the daughter, and she says, "Oh, my father doesn't talk to anybody. You know, I'm the face or the screen." She says, "On my father's screen, so he has to talk to me." You know, she says some weird cryptic stuff, and he winds up leaving and stuff. But since we have to do full spoilers and stuff, we eventually find out that Oblivion was part of the Videodrome project when it started, and it was sort of his idea. But then when the people realized the potential it had and what they wanted to use it for, and he didn't want to use it that way, they used it to kill him. And this was a year ago. So Brian Oblivion has actually been dead for a year, but he recorded so many videos of himself in that year that his daughter's been able to still play them on TV and stuff and preserve the illusion that he's alive. It really get weird because now we've got Max has watched quite a bit of Videodrome, is starting to really hallucinate as a result of it, and then she gives him a tape. It seems to be that Brian Oblivion is talking directly to him, which should be impossible because it's a pre-recorded message from a dead person and stuff. And yeah, that's when his body has changed, although it only stays that way for a little while before it goes away. And you're just like, so at this point, you're like, okay, yeah, this brings in some powerful hallucinations. All right.
And I forget who is the guy that comes in and he, you know, he wants to put the machine on him to record his hallucinations.
Oh yeah, so that's Barry Convex.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he's the guy that works. He's the of Videodrome, which is what is it? Spectacular Optical Corporation, which is an eyeglass company, which is more or less their front.
Mm-hmm.
They're behind everything and stuff. But yeah, he it. And he's just like, okay, but I don't want this showing up for the TV for the week of, you know, TV movie of the week thing, and I don't get any residuals. Even at this point, he's still is sort of willing to go with it, even though he's seen all this weirdness and been through all this. Max is still, he's like, yeah, okay, I can handle this type thing. But yeah, so he's got a vagina stomach that functions as a VCR. Remember, this is 1983. VCRs are not common in houses yet. They're kind of a new hot thing.
Well, they're betas, aren't they? Aren't they beta tapes?
Yeah. VHS did exist at the time, but they used beta because the tapes size was better.
Right.
Beta because of the size for the movie.
Mm.
Yeah, my family, that was our first VCR. Our first VCR was beta. Like I said, I think the first movie I ever saw on video was a beta copy of E.T.
Yeah, I don't know why, man, but I don't know anything about beta. I don't know if it was just a regional thing, or the only thing I know about beta is like Al Bundy used it a lot. That was his choice in the format wars.
Yeah. I mean, ours still, like, a lot of people remember the beta ones where, like, instead of pushing the tape in, it was like a top flip thing up and put it down. Like, ours wasn't like that. Ours was you push the tape in. So not all betas were like that, because ours was more, you know, it looked just sort of like a normal VHS VCR, from what I remember.
From what I've heard, I think beta is actually better quality than VHS, but I think it lost the war. Beta stayed around.
Do you remember why it lost the war?
Was it
like
porn?
what the determining factor? Yeah, it's porn.
Yeah.
Porn determined it.
I know, like, just until like a few years ago, I think a lot of news stations still used betas to, I guess, record some stuff onto. I mean, it's because it was a better quality, you know, recording.
Right. So there's another thing going on here that made me think of something, was like that when he's talking to Bianca, the daughter of Oblivion, and later Oblivion talks about how exposure to Videodrome, he said he grew a tumor, a brain tumor, that allowed him to see visions. But then he said now he thinks that the visions brought the tumor, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it was the first instance before the other stuff happened. It was the idea of people merging with the medium or the technology. That's the idea. The tumor is a new way of processing the information, blah, blah, blah. And of course, you've got a more direct thing where he has a VCR stomach and stuff. And that reminded me of this really, it's a really famous book. I didn't personally like it, but years ago for school, I had to do a book. I think most people know the C.S. Lewis book, Out of the Silent Planet, which I think is a very good book. But there was a book from a few years earlier, written in the 20s. I can't remember the name of the author, but it was called A Voyage to Arcturus, that people aren't as familiar with. And a lot of people say that A Voyage to Arcturus was a direct influence on Out of the Silent Planet. And I had to read A Voyage to Arcturus, and I hated it. And what it's about is, it starts off really weird. It's like these people meet to have like a seance at like a lighthouse or something to like talk to the dead or something. And anyway, and the main character winds up like, I don't know if he goes into a trance or whatever, but anyway, he wakes up and he's transported to an alien world. And it's about how he keeps passing into these different environments and meeting these different beings. But every time he does, his body changes in some way. Like he grows some weird extra things, usually some sort of organ on the outside of his body, because it adapts into the environment he's in. And pretty much every time he interacts with the beings, it almost always ends with him killing them violently for some reason. Like that's how like every encounter goes, and then just like I don't even remember how it ends. But it's a very annoying, dissatisfying book that doesn't feel like anything to me. But I don't know. There's a lot of people I'm sure that liked it, but it reminded me of that right away because it had the idea of like humans adapting by like actually growing like a new organ or something. And that's what's going on here. That's what Brian Oblivion talks about, and that's what we see James Woods' character go through. It's like to adapt to this new world where television rules and everything like that. Like humans are able to, like physically adapt to it by growing an organ to better, I don't know, receive information or whatever like that. It's such a cool idea. I really like it. I don't know if he got any of that from A Voyage to Arcturus or not, but it made me think of that book, even though I don't like the book, but it did make me think of that.
Yeah, that was one of the parts of the movie that was more confusing to me, because Oblivion says that it started as a tumor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they cut the tumor out, and what happens then? The tumor became Videodrome.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really vague exactly how Videodrome got started, and then all I knew is that then they realized it had the ability to affect people and change people and even brainwash them, and that's when he didn't want them to do that, and then they killed him because they wanted to use it for that. But yeah, I'm still not really exactly clear how he says it like came into being exactly.
Well, he says he was the first one that got to see Videodrome. I don't know if that means before the tumor was cut out, and it's kind of, they leave that open. It's a little bit vague. I mean, no real reason to get any more in depth than that, I guess. But
Bianca says that the brain tumor is supposed to be a side effect of having viewed Videodrome like enough. So I don't know. But anyway, when he tried to stop them, they murdered him. And then, so he's been dead for a year, but people don't know it because she's been playing his tapes and stuff. But, and then anyway, eventually, you've got Max getting contacted by convicts. And then you find out that Harlan, who was the guy that worked at the station, his tech guy, was actually part of all that. And he was sent there specifically to help him. But like they didn't find Videodrome by accident. They actually found it on purpose, and they wanted to expose him to it because they wanted to bring him into it, I guess. And then it's a really weird... they want to purge North America, which apparently is getting soft.
Yeah.
They want to purge those elements out. If you're like the type of person they don't like, you'll just die from it, seems to be what they're saying. That you'll get fate, that the people they don't like, the people that are the lowlifes that like all they care about is like the extreme sex and violence stuff, like those people, they would get brain tumors that would have killed them. And the idea was like the other people would adapt, but those people will be killed off, is what they're saying. It's a little confusing, but that's what he means when he's talking about a purge.
I thought like the sex and the violence was merely to get the signal in. That does something with it makes your brain open to the signal more.
I think that's true too, but yeah, he does say something like the people that are more fixated on it, like
Right.
it'll kill them, and that's like part of the goal is
The
to get rid of those people, because he talks about, you know, like what a cesspool the world has become. He really buys into it. Wait, I've got the quote. I can find it.
There's all this ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Y'all get rid of all those damn perverts too.
Yeah. Oh man, I had the quote. Where the hell is it? Oh yeah, he says like North America's getting soft, Patrone or Patron or however you say it, and the rest of the world's getting tough, very, very tough. We're entering savage new times. We're going to have to be pure and direct and strong if we're going to survive them. Now you in this cesspool you call a television station, and your people who wallow around in it, and your viewers who watch you do it, you're rotting us away from the inside. We intend to stop that rot. Like, so yeah, he seems to almost have like a moral outrage to it, which is pretty funny. Like, because he seems like such an easygoing guy, then you find out, no, he's a spy, and like he actually is disgusted by you.
Is this like a Cold War type thing? I don't really know what he's talking about by the rest of the world is getting strong.
Yeah, I don't know either. But like that even seems to factor into it, and in that like Videodrome itself is almost a kind of Cold War that's going on. It's like some sort of weird battlefield.
It's like another weapon.
Right.
You just show a bunch of like graphic sex and, you know, kill these people from the inside out.
So yeah, it's like it's a war that's being fought for the control of people's minds is the type of thing. And like Videodrome, they need Videodrome to win so that it like they can get the toughness or whatever, get rid of the weakness. I don't know, the rot, as he says. It's a little muddy, but I mean, yeah, what do you expect?
Cesspool.
But that's the other thing that's funny. Like, as weird as things start to get, like the idea of the Spectacular Optical Corporation, this eyeglass company, that they're just a front for like this malevolent organization that is actually a weapons manufacturer and wants to, you know, harness Videodrome and use it in this way. Like, you can even view that as part of the hallucination. That it's just like something he came up with himself. You know, suddenly it looks more and more likely that, like, when you get bizarre plot twists, like evil conspiracy operating out of an optician's, his best friend being part of the conspiracy, murdering people with his flesh metal hybrid weaponry, that's all part of a massive psychotic break that he's had that was triggered by the Videodrome signal. So you can argue that too, that it's all because of that. Like, that even like the conspiracy he's finding out, like, none of that's even true. It's part of the hallucination too, right? Because I mean, it gets really weird. So you really don't know. You can just decide for yourself, draw your own conclusions once the movie's over, like how much of it was real, or if he imagined all of it at a certain point, or if he, like, you know, he knew like the broad strokes, but then he just filled in the details himself with like weirdness. You know, he goes for it, which I think is pretty cool. Because, yeah, then the idea is that they can reprogram people by, like, putting tapes into their stomach vaginas, right? Because that's what they want to do. Because that's how they first get him to be an assassin. Because they say, we need control. We need control of your network. So go kill your partners, and it totally works. They put the tape in it, and then he gets his weird flesh gun. He murders his partners very easily. But then when they send him after Bianca, she manages to distract him, where he watches video supposedly of Nikki. And she talks to him, and then she says, oh, look, the Videodrome people murdered her, and he sees her, like, die. And then she manages to reprogram him again and send him back after the Videodrome people. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's when he sticks the tape, the new tape in his stomach vagina, he pulls out some weird, like, stump. You know what I'm talking about? His friend guy.
Yeah, what happens to Harlan? Yeah.
What exactly is that? I've never known what that is. It looks like a piston almost, or some sort of a.
I don't know if it means like he's trying to reveal that that's what really is underneath his hand, like if he's a robot or something, because then he explodes.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Because after he after he does that, he shoots him a few times, right? And then he just explodes. Which is pretty amazing. And then when he finally kills Convex, it's even better. When he kills Convex by shooting him, Convex collapses and then just sort of bursts apart into like a gory mess on the stage. And again, I mean, everybody's freaking out, but you don't know what they're seeing. Maybe they just saw a man get shot and fall down, and only he's seeing him burst apart, or maybe it's all, again, it's pretty crazy. But I have no idea what the hand thing is really supposed to mean at all. Well, yeah, it's not just like a bloody stump. It's like it ends here, and there's like a long, thin part, and then a solid
thin,
part at the
yeah,
end.
it's thin, and then there's a round type cylindrical object at the end.
Yeah, I have no idea if that's supposed
Okay.
to mean something or be something. I really don't know.
I didn't know if that was over my head or
But
not.
no, it looks pretty cool. No, if it's supposed to be something, it's over my head. Like I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's a pretty good visual.
Yeah, I think that may be the main part of it, is it looks cool. But the death of convicts.
As I said, the movie's like a great contrast of like these really dingy, sort of everyday, ordinary environments. Nothing special, and then like this craziness, like the gore and the body horror and stuff like that. It's a good visual contrast for sure.
The death of convicts is really cool looking.
Yeah, good sounds too. You hear them like cracking and popping. It's pretty good.
The whole movie has got good sounds in it. I know as soon as it starts up, it's like him and Debbie Harry. You can hear it's like really loud, wet kissing. I'm like, oh man,
yeah,
we're in for it now.
Well, as we know, a master of assaulting your senses is Cronenberg, right? If they could make movies that had like smells and tastes, he'd be into the ground floor of that too. He'd be like, "Oh, good, I want to get all that on you." But yeah, his station's called Civic TV, which is a nod to City TV. Because the cable landscape in like the early '80s was pretty interesting and very different from what we have now, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think you could run a cable channel relatively easily. I think with low cost. I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. And nowadays, again, like content is everywhere. Like we're doing content right now just through YouTube ourselves, and stuff. So again, this is all stuff that Marshall McLuhan foresaw. He didn't live to see a lot of it, but yeah, he wouldn't have been surprised. Oh, now I remember actually that it wasn't just Tim Leary either. It was it's funny. One of the more famous quotes to be attributed to Andy Warhol was Warhol's, quote that in the future everybody will be famous for 15 minutes, right? And we talk about 15 minutes of fame. He just cribbed that from Marshall McLuhan. It wasn't exact words, but it was more or less the sentiment, and he admitted that himself too. So he was another one that took it, and it's very true. And again, maybe it's better that Marshall McLuhan didn't live to see reality TV and the Kardashians and I don't know, and Instagram and stuff, like, because he at least foresaw like the usefulness and good stuff. What's funny is like as deep and philosophical as he got on all these points and stuff, he didn't talk about he wasn't interested in the moral sides of it. He never got into that debate about whether it was good or bad or ethical. He just talked about the effects that media have on us and how we get interwoven with it. He never really explored the moral side of it. It wasn't I guess it wasn't his interest. So actually, I don't know how he would feel about that stuff.
He's probably a good thing he didn't live.
He probably wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't be happy with it. But yeah, at least he was right. But speaking of Andy Warhol, he actually said this movie was Clockwork Orange of the '80s.
That's a little bit. I guess in that it didn't have the same impact, which is too bad, but it could have. Maybe if it was, I mean, one of the reasons you have to remember the Clockwork Orange was made by a director who at least had a bit of a name at the time. Yeah. Like maybe if Cronenberg was a bigger name, this would have had a similar impact, and that it's very visceral and shocking in a lot of ways. It's not a bad comparison, I suppose. Think of worse.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a bold statement considering this was only '83. But
that's true too.
Leave it to Warhol to make bold statements, I guess.
I suppose so.
Something I wanted to get into was the practical effects.
Really good.
And I believe was it Rick Baker that did the work on this film?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And obviously really great stuff, and they did lots of cool stuff with rear projection on the the television itself, and there was apparently you don't even really think about this watching the film, but there's even shooting the television with what's his name, Obsidian or
Oblivion.
Oblivion. The frame rate's all fucked up, so they had to find a way to make that not look weird.
Yeah.
So I mean, just that was a problem, and then they used a lot of the rear projection on the. I want to talk about this with you. It's the when the TV pushes out, the screen pushes out.
That predates Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah, but they actually used dental dam on that.
I had no idea.
And I was like, I think I know what that is, and yeah, but I don't know. It just kind of surprised me that that's what they went with. I guess just a really thin latex.
Yeah, it's creative.
To push it out, but
yeah, I mean, but yeah, it predates that effect that they do in Nightmare on Elm Street with the pushing out. I mean, it looks a little better in Elm Street, but still the idea is there.
You saw the is it New Mutants? Was that the preview, the new X-Men movie? Or
yeah.
What was the one that just came out? New Mutants.
Yeah.
And there was one scene, man. It was like all over the place in that trailer, coming from the walls. That exact same effect.
I assume that trailer must really confuse a lot of people. Like, why a movie about X-Men spin-off characters looks like a goddamn horror movie, but it is based on some stuff from the comics, at least loosely, the sentiment.
Yeah, I remember you saying
it's an interesting direction to go in. There's a really dark, weird, fucked up storyline back in the 80s called I think it was the Demon Bear. And it had that. I mean, it was a fairly short arc. I think it was only 3 issues and stuff, but I think it's borrowing heavily from that. New Mutants was a really interesting comic back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it seems really cool. I don't know if that seems like kind of a throwaway movie though. If they're going to stick with that,
I don't like any of the Fox movies except Deadpool, I guess. I don't like any of the X-Men movies or the Wolverine movies. I like none of them. None.
See, I mean, the bad thing is those X-Men movies do pretty well, so you don't really have any incentive to turn the property back over to Marvel.
Yes, they'll never get to see them in the MCU.
Not like
Spider-Man. Like a tragedy. Yeah, which just seems like a tragedy to me because the MCU has really come together now nicely and seems to have a lot of stuff firmly established. But it's got this big gaping hole because there's no X characters.
Yeah, I was always a huge fan of the X.
You watch
X Factor.
You watch the Avengers movie that brings in Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and it's just too bad you can't point out that they're Magneto's kids.
Can they not even say Magneto?
They don't even say mutant. They're not mutants in it. In that, they aren't mutants. They got their powers by being experimented on by Strucker. Mutants. Because there's no mutants in the MCU. Because that's X stuff.
You can't even say the word mutant? It's not even...
I'm pretty... Well, maybe you can, but they don't. No one does. So, yeah. So it sucks from that point of view for sure.
Yeah. Oh well. Maybe Bryan Singer can go molest some children and make some more movies. Oh, too soon.
Make some movies in between molestation sessions.
It's funny, Victor Salva gets raked across the coals for something he did, 20 years ago and served his time. Yet, Bryan Singer is still out there doing it, still getting jobs, still working.
And I mean, I'm not exactly an apologist for somebody like, the artsy guy. Polanski, but I mean, Jesus, to this day, people are like, child rapist Polanski. I don't believe that. I would not use that term, but anyway.
I don't believe that either, but I mean, the guy did commit a crime and then fled.
Yeah, but then especially that the girl that it got all about, she does not care. She says the only thing she regrets is that her mom found out and told the media, and that fucked up her life.
Well,
that the actual stuff didn't fuck up her life, but the aftermath fucked up her life. She just says, "I wish no one ever found out." ever. And I know that's sending the wrong message because it's like, yes, if you're a victim, victims should speak out. But I mean, at the same time, I don't know. If she didn't feel like a victim, she shouldn't have people pointing at her and be like, yes, you're a victim. You're fucked up. Like, she felt fine. And the thing that fucked everything up for her, but anyway, that's a really sticky issue. But I just mean, I don't know.
That was like
I just don't like
rape, right? Is that what that was?
Yeah, I don't like people being painted with the same brush. Is all I'm saying.
Sure, you know, I totally agree with that.
It's just more complicated than that. Like, I get it. If somebody's like, hey, anybody that touches kids, you know, they're all scum to me. Fine, okay, I'm not gonna try to defend it. But I just mean, because it's an uncomfortable topic. But the truth is, there's levels to it. There's worse versions and stuff. And you see stuff on TV. Like, I remember watching. Again, I'm not trying to apologize for pedophiles and stuff that do bad. You know, they shouldn't or anything like that. But it's just, there are levels. Like, I remember watching an episode years ago of, and I'm sure this is based on some reality. I'm not saying they're blowing it up or making it not true, but I remember watching an episode of Criminal Minds, and not only was it like that some pedophile guy had like kidnapped some boy, right? He kidnapped this boy for the purposes of molesting him, very bad. But not only that, but he like kept him in this room where he had like a webcam on him at all times, and he was doing like an auction, and he was auctioning him off to other pedophiles to be like their sex slave. And I just mean, I'm not even saying that doesn't happen or anything like that, but I just mean, I can just imagine most people watching that, and they're just like, that's what we have to watch out for. Like, everybody's that level, you know? Because, yeah, everybody's like on the exact same level, instead of like, oh, this person is like finds themselves attracted to children and they feel really bad and guilty and upset about it and stuff like that. And then this guy who's just like, I just see them as like slaves. You know, they're slaves. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not. People can easily get the wrong idea and stuff. So I don't know. You can already say, "Oh, you're covering up something dark, aren't you?" No, I'm really not. But I do think about it more than maybe some people.
I think if you,
but I don't know. I guess I just try to think about this stuff. You know, that it's again, there's different levels. You can't just paint everybody with the same brush. And murder 6 people is worse than somebody who murders 1 person.
Or
there's different circumstances for murder and how you kill people and why. I mean, killing people is always wrong, but I'm not trying to say, oh, yes, you should kill people, because of course not either. But it's me. But people actually are more willing to talk about that than they are when it comes to, say, like rape or molestation. Again, I'm not trying to justify anything. There's no justification for rape and molestation. There isn't. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there are circumstances and facts and factors and all this stuff that do make it levels and different. But anyway.
Well, you know, Polanski has been accused by a few other people, like not in America, but of like legitimate rape.
Yeah, and maybe that's true. Like, but again, I'm not going to come to his defense or anything like that. So maybe that's true. But I know about like the big case, the one with the 13-year-old back in the day. They got everything going. Like, I know all about that. And you know, if she herself was like, it didn't really bother me or upset me, it was just the whole thing. She's like, the whole thing that made everything upsetting was when it became known and stuff. And she just, to this day, she just says, I wish no one ever knew. My life would be way better off. Like, it's not like she's like, oh, it's a great thing that happened, but it was obviously something she felt she could have put behind her.
13? Oh, that's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make excuses, even though the guy was fucked up and his wife was murdered and stuff, but
that'd be different if he was 14 when he did it, but no, he was like 45 when he did it.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Manson made me do it.
Yeah, maybe.
13, that's a bit young, man.
Still can't do it.
That's they can't like think freely at that age. 17, maybe.
Yeah. Again, it's a whole thing, and everybody's different and stuff like that, right? I mean, we have our legal age, but there's plenty of people that it's not like once they're 18, that means they're totally ready for that sort of thing. Just like there's people in their 20s that aren't emotionally ready. And that's sort of a weird double standard, I think, too. Because I remember there's plenty of times in real life or even in movies where like you'll have like both adults, but one of them is like mentally handicapped, and people are like, "Oh, that's cute." I'm like, "That's just on the, that's like," I'm like, "That's not cute. That's like on the same level." If you're like somebody and you're like, no, you know, a normal capacity, and you're like sleeping with somebody like who has mental retardation, like that's the same level of being a pedophile, if not worse, to me. Like there's that awful movie that like Mel Gibson did way back in Australia before anybody knew who he was, And that's what it's about. Like, he's like a slow, mentally retarded sling blade type guy, and he gets into a romance with like an ordinary woman. And people still think that movie's like charming and great. I'm like, it's not charming, it's disturbing as hell. What's wrong with this woman? She can't find herself a normal man. She has to like take advantage of this guy. Like, that's not cute or charming.
That's like
It's the
Lawnmower
same
Man.
thing.
The
Yes.
one's like
At least in
fantasizing
Lawnmower
about
Man.
Job.
Yeah, and at
I'm
least
gonna
in
rape the
Lawnmower
hell out of
Man.
this.
Yeah, and Lawnmower Man is shown to be sinister and wrong and stuff. But there's other movies too. I can't think, but there's other movies too, like better, well-known movies that like seem to make it seem like it's cute to have a relation. Like, no, like that's on the same level as pedophilia, if not worse.
Was it Giovanni Ribisi and Juliette Lewis? Weren't they in one together where they both had Down syndrome and they were a couple?
Well, if they're both on the same level, then I don't have any objection to that. Like, I remember, yeah, but no. Like, the first, like, I hate to bring this up, but everybody knows it anyway, and I feel bad, but I mean, the first sexual experience, like, Kurt Cobain himself had was, like, he fondled, like, a mentally retarded girl, and he felt, like, horribly guilty about it, like, after, when he was, like, 14, she was, like, 14, I don't know, it was when they're teenagers, and then he, like, felt, like, really guilty about it afterwards and stuff. I'm like, yeah, because he knew it was wrong. It's wrong, and it's just like, yeah. Anyway. But people don't talk about that very much. Although I still think, yeah, plenty of mentally handicapped people are being victimized. I'm just saying.
No, yeah. I
mean, molestation of children and minors, that's the big hot topic, and that's the fancy thing. But there's other stuff going on, too. That's all I'm saying.
That's where you need to be looking.
Yeah. It's like how my mom doesn't like people with breast cancer. I'm joking. Of course, she has no objection to that. I just know that my mom thinks that, like, you know, we talk so much about breast cancer, but there's all these other things that we never talk about and stuff. So sometimes it pisses her off. And then I joke with her. I'm like, you hate people with breast cancer, but that's not what she means at all. And stuff like that. She just means sometimes she gets sick of hearing about it and stuff when there's all sorts of other worthy things that get buried and people don't talk about, is what she meant. Stuff. And I guess I kind of have that going too. Which, again, I realize makes me sound like some sort of, like, closet pedophile or apologist for, like, molestation, and I swear I'm not. But, no, I do give these things.
We should give these guys a second chance. We should give these guys another shot.
Not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we do live in a climate of hysteria about it.
Yeah, oh, totally.
That's all I'm saying. You know, like, there's a playground right by where I live. And, you know, it'd be nice to, like, you know, sometimes stand and watch the kids. It reminds me of being a kid. But, you know, I have to move on after about 10 seconds, you know, or people are going to get the wrong idea. And I understand you have to be careful, and everybody should be very vigilant with their kids. But it is just sort of sad that that's going on. Like, I can't be like, oh, nice kids. And they're like, which one's yours? I'd be like, oh, I don't have a kid. I'm just watching them. They'd be like, what the fuck? You know, like, get the hell out of, you know.
I love them all so much.
Yeah.
No, I kind of feel the same way, and I have kids. I'm just like, all right, I'll just keep my eye line over here. You know, I make sure that they don't think I'm weird.
I don't know. My parents, you know, they didn't have to give me the gory details. When my parents told me when I was a little kid, they just told me that there were people out there that couldn't have kids of their own, that wanted kids, and they could be desperate enough to steal kids, which is true. They didn't tell me about some of the other reasons, and you know what? I was fine. Didn't need to know back then. They didn't need to tell me that, like, oh, they might want to touch you in terrible ways. No coming back from that. As usual, we've, like, buried ourselves and put ourselves in a weird, awkward corner. We're like, what do we seg into now? But anyway.
Well, like 30 other people have come out against Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
Weinstein.
I've read a lot of the accounts too, and they're all so, like, specific that they can't be wrong. Like, they're just all so different, and they're all so specific, and they all have these details. Like, I believe them pretty much 100%.
That very well may be the case. I just feel like this is an opportunity for, like, you know, say he called me a bitch one time or something, so I'm going to come out and say a bunch of shit against him because I can now.
That's
I
true.
don't
But
know. I just feel
at
like
least the ones I've read are legit. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I don't
And
want
he definitely has a pattern of like this whole thing of like give me a massage or give you a massage. That's a running thing. That like seems to be his go-to move. Like start off with massages. So
I
that's
don't want
sort of
to.
a tell.
I mean, I don't want to downplay it at all, but it just seems like so many people have been abused by this guy, and they've been silent for decades. And it's just, I don't know, it just seems like a lot to me because I mean, I would hope that if that happened to a woman, they wouldn't be quiet about it. They would go tell the law enforcement or whatever.
Yeah. There was
But
somebody that did tell people. She said she told a bunch of people at a party, and they were like, "Oh, that's Harvey."
yeah, that's Harvey, man. He'll fuck you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's literally what she said. Like it happened.
Wow,
Like she told people like immediately, like the day after, and
that's
they were just like, "Oh
really
yeah,
sad.
yeah."
But I mean, it's people all over the place being uncovered with this.
Just like there was that thing, about Ben Affleck saying like when somebody says something to him, he's like, "God damn it, I told him years ago to cut that out," And now Ben Affleck's under fire because like, "Oh, you knew quite a bit and didn't say anything."
Yeah,
So there's all sorts of people saying that they knew and just didn't want to rock the boat and stuff like that. I think Quentin Tarantino said he knew some stuff and he's like, and I'm ashamed I didn't say stuff.
I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, I don't know. As far as like Tarantino's position, I mean, if he like knew of something, I mean, how is it his place to go and tell? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing because a lot of people are like, well, if you're complacent and you're complicit, you're part of it and stuff. And again, I think that varies from situation to situation because yeah, if you're removed enough from it and it's something you just sort of heard about and you're like, oh, this is the third time I'm hearing about this. Yeah, okay, you might be able. I mean, if I was in that position, probably the best thing I could do is be like, okay, the people I know, I'll tell them to watch out. I don't know if I'd just be like willing to be like, hey, I'm going to call the cops on him. Like, it wouldn't be enough.
Well, because that would be the end of his, relationship with his producer.
Mm-hmm.
And, now he could probably do that because he's, created a name for himself. But 10 years ago, maybe not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. The whole thing. I mean, if it's unfortunate that it had to happen to anybody, but it just seems like it's so widespread at this point. I mean, this past week, I've heard about so many people getting fired, and I don't know if you heard about the agent for. I know all this from Cameron's Twitter post because his entire Twitter page is like RapeGate all day.
Yeah, I've noticed.
The the main kid from Stranger Things, he was in It, like Wolf Sky Moon or some shit like that. Whatever he's got a really weird name. But anyway, his agent was accused of some sort of sexual stuff, and he fired his agent.
That's good.
It was just like, I mean, you can't be attached to this stuff. The PR would kill you. Anybody who gets even accused, you've got to separate yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, maybe that's what's right because, as we said, like for decades, it was a climate of just like more or less accepting it and putting it under the rug. So maybe this is what has to happen. In order to affect change, it has to become this really toxic thing. As unfortunate as that is in a lot of ways, and also has, and in what also is unfortunate is it has the potential, as you said, to like bring down innocent people and stain them and stuff. But I guess this is sort of like the natural reaction to something that sort of builds up for so long without like really any consequences.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like we're further along as a society that this has been going on so widespread for so long to so many people. I don't know. It just is. I guess it's hard for me to put myself in that position because I'm not like that at all. I don't think about that. I've never been aggressive towards women like that, so it's hard for me to even kind of imagine that.
Yeah.
To just like, hey, come in here and wash my back, or.
Yeah, just having the like. Not just like having the intent, but actually having the gall to follow through with it.
Yeah, exactly. or like Harvey Weinstein performing like aggressive oral sex on Asia Argento. How does that work?
Man, I don't know, but she just talked about being so scared that at one point she just thought she should just go along with, like, again, like, as you said, it's impossible. Whether you're putting yourself in her position or his position, you can't do it. And that's one of the things that, you know, you have to shy away from and not reaction to. It's like, oh, that person didn't react the way I would, so I don't believe them, or, you know, stuff like that. People react differently, and we don't know how we would react for sure if you haven't been in it yourself and stuff. So I don't know.
Well, I know I'm probably coming off like a huge misogynist, but I just don't, you know, I don't really know anything about that mindset. So it's kind of hard for me to put myself there.
What, that predatory mindset?
Yeah, that, or, you know, even just the, you know, just, I mean, guys maybe not necessarily rapey, but, you know, they're just overly aggressive towards women, like, hey, nice jugs, you know, type shit like that, you know, which nowadays that's frowned
I don't know.
upon.
I mean, I've seen people like that, and I've seen people that were definitely like interested in groping before.
I've known plenty of guys that do that type of stuff. I just, you know, it's never been me. That, hey,
So,
nice
I mean,
ass, you know, stuff like that.
So, like, elevate that person to a position of real wealth and power and influence, and you can understand, I think, to a certain degree, how it does happen.
A lot of these guys like Devin Faraci and that Ain't It Cool News guy, Harry Knowles, like, oh man, like the biggest nerds on the planet. I can't imagine them being like that. But
yeah,
like,
but you just never know how people are going to react to the situation.
Just can't imagine them even being in the same room as a boob, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the world is more complicated than that, obviously. I don't know.
But,
it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
We're a pretty sex-focused society. And yet there's still people that give off a vibe that seems to go more with that, and other people that don't. Like, I don't know what sort of vibe I give off. I don't know if people are surprised to know that I've had a lot of girlfriends or been with a lot of girls, like, and stuff like that. I mean, not trying to... I don't know. Everybody's different.
I was watching this.
I don't know. I mean, like, we had enough people, you know, that would watch, like, the Sausage Factory and stuff like that, and think, or at least joke that I was gay and stuff like that. So it's like, I give off that vibe, I guess. I don't know, you know. So I don't know, right?
I was watching this program the other day. It was, it doesn't really matter what it was, but there was a lesbian boss was talking to another woman, was saying, you know, how her new haircut was hot and stuff like that. And I was like, I was talking to my wife. I was like, that's sexual harassment, right? Like, I really need this stuff defined for me because I don't really know what, I mean, that would be, right? Like saying like, oh, that haircut's hot.
I guess. But people, of course, can debate the context of hot.
I mean,
right?
We need to do like a...
hot is in arousing or hot is in hip, right?
Let's see. Hey, how was your weekend? Good. Okay. How was yours? That was good. Was that sexual harassment?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody could. No, I can't see any way they could get that out of it, even if they're really reaching.
Don't talk to female employees.
Yeah,
under any circumstances. That's why they've got that sensitivity training stuff for everybody.
Yeah. What's weird is, like, that's the other thing. Like, I complain about, like, my life and how hard it is to, like, meet girls, to, like, go out on dates and stuff like that with. And then the weirdest part is, like, most of the people that I know that, like, are married or have long-term girlfriends or whatever, they knew them through work.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that impossible? Because one, a lot of the time it's, like, not allowed or frowned on. And two, I can't imagine, like, let's say it's 100% okay. And let's say it's 100%, I'm not worried about, like, some sort of, like, sexual harassment thing coming back at me. It's more like being back in school, okay? We'll put it that way. Where it's all let's pretend it's all very innocent. And everything, all the other stuff, all the other factors are out the window. I still couldn't do it because I think, okay, I work in this office, she works in this office. I ask her out. She says no. I have to come back here every fucking day
Yeah,
and see her. You know, like, I don't understand, like, how anybody does that. Okay, let's say she says yes. We go on a few dates. And then we, you know, it goes nowhere. Like, the only way it works is if she's the woman I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. Everything else is a terrible. Everything else is a terrible scenario, because it's like, oh, okay, and then we actually slept together, but then we broke up, and now maybe she can tell other women, about stuff that she knows about me now. You know, it's like what John Mulaney said: anyone who's seen my dick and met my parents has to die. Can't have these people wandering around with too much information about you and stuff, right? And, you know, I'm 34. I've been dating for 17 years with a few breaks here and there, but for the most part, I've been fairly active, whatever. Make of that what you will. I'm not going to throw numbers in and stuff like that, but it just mean. But at least, you know, the world isn't littered with people that I have to go see again. They're gone. But, I just couldn't imagine asking out a woman that, like, I work with, or, you know, I go to my Taekwondo and Muay Thai class. There's some cute girls there. I would never ask them out because, again, same thing. I have to go back.
Yeah.
You know, so that just blows my mind. So I'm just like, so when people are like, well, oh, your girlfriend, you met her on the internet? I'm like, yeah, because, like, it's the only thing that makes sense to me anymore. Meeting people in real life is either impossible or terrifying.
Yeah.
Or a combination of both and stuff like that. Because I'm like, on the internet, like, even if they're not interested in you, they don't hate you for contacting them, because it's like a dating site or something like that. They're there for the same reason. So you're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, oh, I'm not interested. At least they don't think you're a horrible jackass. Whereas if I see a girl at a food court, that doesn't mean she wants me to go up to her. And again, I have no information. Maybe she has a boyfriend. Maybe she has a girlfriend. Maybe she has 4 husbands. Maybe, you know, maybe a million things. And I don't know anything. I just have to go up completely cold. Maybe the last thing, maybe she just got out of a relationship, and the last thing she wants is some asshole talking to her, even if it's as polite and innocuous as possible. I know nothing. So then that's what I like about the comfort of the internet. I know some stuff. There's your age, your interests, and things like that. So, yeah, I'm terrified of meeting people in real life, even though I did used to do it years ago. I don't even remember how the fuck I did it. I don't remember. Oh, and yet the people I talk to, it's like, well, I met them through work. I'm like, that sounds like the worst idea ever of all of them. For the reasons I just said. So, I don't know. It blows my mind, man. It blows my mind.
I know there used to be statistics like, you know, the people in relationships, they live so-and-so miles away, you know, like within 3 miles or some shit, lived or worked or whatever, you know, but I'm sure that's different now with, you know, internet dating and all that.
You know, like the last 3 girls I was in relationships with didn't even live in this city most of the time.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you're alone. I know a lot of people that meet people online.
Yeah. But yeah, but that's what I mean. It's just sort of almost like just sort of what I've been reduced to in a way. I have some social anxiety and stuff like that, but not nearly as bad as other people. Like, I know how to meet people and talk to people, but on that level, it's just become impossible because of the factors I said. And online is just, again, you just get the information. You have no information out there in the world. And if you do have the information, it's probably, again, because of a situation like I said, well, it's a recurring thing, so they say no. Well, what are you supposed to do? Oh, I love going back to my Muay Thai, seeing the 3 girls that shot me down every Tuesday. That's fun. You know, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Try again.
That's crazy. Yeah. Just hit on, just ask out all the females.
Have you changed your mind yet?
Age. Yeah. But yeah, that'll be the other thing. Just try again on the same girl.
Wear them out.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's sometimes how I hear people too. It's like, oh, we didn't like each other at first. I'm like, you're a fucking liar. You just want to make your relationship sound like some romantic comedy. Everybody wants to have that great story. The only like good story I have of like how I met my girlfriend was like my second girlfriend, my first sort of serious girlfriend. I met her at driver's ed, and she was from a different school. I didn't know her at all. And I met her at driver's ed, and I had just been on a school trip to Boston, and I had some American money left over, including change. And it was in the hallway at this building in driver's ed. It was we were on break, so I went down to get a pop because I always need to drink pop. And I had American quarters that kept dropping through the machine. And she had like seen me in class, and she thought I was cute, I guess, or whatever. Actually, she told me she thought I was a crackhead. because I had like long hair. She said, I thought you looked like a crackhead because you had like really long hair and a beard and stuff. I'm like, oh, and ripped jeans. I'm like, oh, well, that's attractive. But anyway, and that was her pretense to talk to me. She came up and she gave me like Canadian change to use on it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a neat, cute little how I met story. The rest are like boring or I met them online, pretty much. And that was years ago. That was when I was like 17. But, yeah. Meeting people's a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, because every once in a while I'm out in public and I see a girl, I'll be like, it'd be really great just to even just talk to her, and I just freeze because I'm like, what can I do? Like, what pretense can I possibly have and stuff? And as you said, like the world we live in now and stuff, like even like the most innocent thing, like could they still like mace me or something? No means no. I'm like, I just said hello.
Talk to me, God. No,
and on the other side of it, and here's a story that, again, told from a different perspective by a different person in different circumstances, would be like a story of sexual harassment or something, right?
Yeah.
But this is a story that usually, I guess, because I'm an insecure guy, I guess, I'm kind of proud of, maybe. And then it's really weird. It's one of those moments. You ever one of those moments where something happens that's so odd to you that even a few seconds after it happened, you're wondering if you've imagined it? Because that's what this was. Okay, so this is about 4 or 5 years ago. Before, yeah, so I was single at the time, so it was before my last big relationship. I was walking along a route that I do all the time, and it goes by in front of this high school, long stretch, and I was walking along. And it was a nice sunny day. I don't know, it might have been the summer. I can't even remember. And eventually, up ahead, way in front of me, there was a girl coming the other way, the other direction. The only thing I could tell from her that far away was that she was probably Middle Eastern because she had like a Habib thing on. Mm-hmm. Not her face covered, just her head and hair. Anyway, didn't mean anything to me. Then when she got to about 20 feet in front of me, she seemed to be looking at me, but I couldn't be sure. So I looked at her and I thought, oh, she's pretty cute. And, you know, she looked like mid-20s, I don't know, something like that. And that was all, because yes, women, I do physically apprise every single one of you as you go by. So anyway, that was all I thought at the time. But as she got closer, she was definitely looking at me. And then she was about 10 feet away. She smiled right at me. And I thought, actually, my mind went to panic because I thought that was recognition. She knows me from somewhere, and I suck with faces. So my mind starts worrying because I'm like, how do I know her? How do I know her? Did I take a class with her? She's probably like a friend of a friend I met once, and I have no memory of, you know. So I'm trying to come up with like what I'm going to say to her and fake my way through this because I don't want to say, who the hell are you? Because I'm convinced as she's coming closer and we're about to pass that she's going to stop and say something. She smiles right at me, looks right at me, and walks right by me. So I'm sorry. And before I can have a thought, I feel, bam, right on my ass, her hand, bam, cup my ass, right? And I turn, hand back, and she walks. She never looks back and just keeps walking. Seconds, I'm already thinking, did I imagine that? Just imagine that. But no, she actually, like, my ass. And she was thrilled about it when she saw me. She was, like smiling at me knowingly, like, oh, and then she got some. And of course, I didn't feel violated or anything. I just felt weird. Like had no, like it just blew my mind that anybody would ever do that.
Did you feel violated?
But no, I didn't. Again, at the end of the day, I feel kind of flattered, and I realize that's a thing. A lot of men, and that's the thing. You'll see men say, "Hey, I would feel flattered if a woman to grab me and stuff like that." And I realize it's a different thing, and maybe I would have felt different if she was, you know, not attractive. I thought she was pretty enough for what I remember and stuff like that. But to this day, you know, I don't feel violated. It's just more like I'm just in complete disbelief that it happened. I just stood there and watched her go because I thought, okay, well, maybe she'll turn around and say something to me, but she never looked back. And I didn't feel like I should run up to her because clearly it wasn't like she wanted to ask me out or anything. She just wanted to get a feel. And so she got it. And I don't feel too bad about it. And that was that. But I mean, within seconds, I was already asking myself if it actually happened or I'd somehow imagined it. But I swear it really happened. And again, I don't mind. It's not a big deal to me. But if you reverse it, if it's different people or if the guy to a girl, I'm sure it would be a horrible thing. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be. Everybody has their own reactions. But for me, I don't think of it as a negative experience. I think of it as an odd, surprising experience.
Mm-hmm.
But for everybody, it's different.
Hands off, ladies.
Yeah. But
Wow,
yeah,
that
no,
is weird.
it was just so weird because like I was so sure she was going to talk to me because she had knew me from somewhere, and I was
Mhm.
starting to feel like some social panic. I was like, oh crap, because this does happen to me from time to time where people recognize me because doesn't even if they haven't seen me in 15 years, I guess I look exactly the same. They know me right off, and then I have no idea who they are because I suck with faces and stuff like that. And that's what I thought was going on. And instead, like, no, she went by and wham, right on my ass. But yeah. Bizarre experience, but yeah, I don't think of it as a bad experience or just a bizarre experience. Like it was
Mhm.
shocking, but it wasn't shocking like I felt violated or cheap or anything. I was like, okay, that's kind of neat, and in a way, I kind of respect it.
Mhm.
She did what she wanted to do, and I kind of respect it. But another person could have a completely different reaction, and that's fine. I understand. That's only my point. My point is everybody's different, and if somebody does feel, and if I had felt violated, I had every right to, because what she did was, fairly brazen and inappropriate on the surface, but it didn't bother me. But if it did bother me, I guess I could have had every right. But again, I don't know. I just think about it every once in a while because it's a weird thing. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before or since. I've had girls smile at me, but that's pretty different from this.
Yeah, I think we need to call the authorities because I'm sure
Track her down.
there's still the statute of limitations has not expired on that yet.
She could be out there victimizing other men, I guess.
I know it.
So to relax and think, oh, she's Middle Eastern. She's very conservative, probably. And then, oh my God, part of her act.
Yeah, that's
But
part
yeah,
of her act. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'm only saying what happened to me. I'm not trying to downplay what happened to other people or even make a joke about it. I'm just saying it's the closest thing to me that's ever happened in that way, unless you count. Well, yes, I've been propositioned and followed around by guys before, but I didn't let them touch me. But I mean, it happened as recently as this summer after years of it not happening. Because I thought I'd aged out of it. Because it happened a lot to me when I was younger. I was convinced I'd aged out of it, but no, apparently I still appeal to a certain amount of guy. But yeah, I don't worry too much about that though. But again, that's the closest I can say to him, and like I have felt at least that much discomfort from it.
Right.
Of having a guy like hit on you or be creepy. I have felt it to a certain extent. Again, I'm not saying, oh, I know exactly how women feel. Of course not. I just know how I felt, and I think I can relate on a tiny level. I mean, it has gotten weird at a few points. I've had guys follow me in their goddamn cars when I'm out at night alone, So it, yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Nobody ever touched me. I never let anybody touch me. Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. That's not flattering. It's not flattering to be like walking alone at like 2 a.m. and having some weird guy ask me if I want to lift, me saying no, and then him just following me anyway and having to cross across the field to get the hell away from him. Yeah, that's not flattering. That's pretty bad.
So next week we're going to do cruising.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the mood. That's a cool movie. Overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Videodrome is a cool movie. I love it. I always get something out of it whenever I watch it. I've watched it a lot of times over the years. It's probably the Cronenberg movie I've seen the most. We could maybe talk about Existence sometime, because in some ways Existence is kind of like a spiritual successor.
Yeah, isn't it three? Isn't it a trilogy? I'm trying to think of the third movie in there. I know Videodrome and Existence. I thought his Body Horror had three films in it. Could be wrong.
Yeah. As I said, we were talking to like Cameron and stuff once. Like I was saying how I don't know if this show or where I would like to talk about like trilogies that are like thematic rather than like story. My favorite one being probably the cosmic horror one that Carpenter did, with The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. Like, that's my favorite. I would love to talk about that sometime, like as a thematic trilogy. It really fascinates me how those movies like line up and follow each other. Is really cool. And I've always been interested in thematic trilogies, movies that like Argento did one too. A lot of people did those.
Which one did Argento do?
What was it? It was like let's see. It was Suspiria.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The Witch trilogy, right?
I think Yeah, it's like,
And
what is it, like
the three
Suspiria,
mothers.
the Fire one, and Mother of Tears or
Uh,
whatever.
the Mother of Tears and
Inferno.
Inferno. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Although Mother of Tears came way later, it was a huge gap. You know, the first two were only a couple years apart, and then a huge gap before Mother of Tears. But yeah, stuff like that. Like those really interest me. Those sorts of trilogies, thematic trilogies, they're cool. But yeah, I didn't actually know if this. Yeah, maybe there is a third one for this. I'll have to look into that.
Maybe it's Dead Ringers. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. For some reason, I was
Dead
thinking
Ringers
that it was
also
three.
Dead Ringers also takes place in Toronto, which is nice. Again, it's not just shot there; it's set there. It's they've got a practice in Toronto.
Well, now I think Cronenberg's kind of like a celebrated Canadian director, right? I mean, you guys like really appreciate his work and stuff, right?
Very much so, for the most part, sure.
I mean, there was a period of time when that wasn't the case, like probably right around the time this film was made.
Oh yeah, and he had to like really fight against the Canadian Film Board and stuff like that because like they didn't like the attention he was bringing and stuff with some of his content. Because yeah, I mean, you don't get a film made in Canada without the Canadian Film Board and stuff. And yeah, he had, as I said, I think we were on something where he was upset about them editing a shot in The Brood because it actually made things look worse. Where it's supposed to be after she had given birth to her weird thing. There was a part where the mother's supposed to be like lovingly cleaning it and licking like the blood and stuff off. But they were so horrified by it, they tried to edit it and they cut it up a bit and made it in a quick cut. But the way it comes now, it looks more like she's trying to like eat it. And he's like, that's a lot more disturbing than what I was suggesting, which is pretty funny. But yes, he had quite a few battles back in the day with not just them, probably others too. But yeah, it took a long time before he got sort of his recognition. But yeah, the film review boards, particularly in the 70s and at least most of the 80s. And he has a really good line too. I always thought it was a really good line that applies to this sort of stuff, whether it's music or movies or whatever like that. And he says, censors tend to do only what psychotics do. They confuse reality with illusion, which I think is great. Very to the point. But yeah. But he's done more sort of straightforward movies lately. The History of Violence, Eastern Promises, A Dangerous Method, all like more narrative structured movies, less to do with being surreal and stuff. This movie, in its surrealist elements, also sort of invented a term where people called it techno-surrealist. So this movie more or less invented that. Although I don't even know what other movies are classified as that. But
that like the cyberpunk aspects of it.
Yeah, I guess.
Like when the gun kind of goes into his body. You see the...
Yeah, as I said, it's like merging technological stuff with surrealistic elements. So techno-surrealist, yeah, I get it. It works. But yeah, it took him quite a few years before he started to get like proper recognition and stuff. Just for a long time, he was very embattled.
Yeah,
he was definitely one of those guys that had to like fight and scrap for everything.
It's good that he's gotten recognition over the years because, I mean, yeah, I think his early films are probably some of his better stuff. The gritty, grimy, the low budget stuff.
Original and daring, He definitely had a unique voice. It's really cool.
Like, what's the Stephen King Dead? What the Stephen King film that he did the adaptation of?
The Dead Zone.
The Dead Zone. That's has a much more studio polished look to it, I think, but still has his unique touches, I think. But,
yeah, I haven't watched that in a long time. I should watch it again.
It's a good film. It just doesn't feel like a straight on Cronenberg film to me.
Well, right, because he didn't write it, and he wrote so many of his.
Yeah,
movies.
I'm sure he was kind of limited too as to what he could do, but
yeah,
still a great film though.
Oh yeah,
but like The Brood and Shivers and this film.
Dead Ringers, Naked Lunch. But yeah, that run from like Shivers to like Spider.
I don't think we brought up The Fly either.
Yeah. But yeah, The Fly is interesting in that like it's a remake of something, so it's not totally original, but it has all his elements brought into it really well.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people hold The Fly in high esteem. It's a really cool and interesting performance by Goldblum, and it's a really great example of the body horror taking it a different sort of direction.
I like it quite a bit. It was probably the first.
To watch The Fly. The Fly 2 has been on my Netflix for a while, and I keep meaning to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, okay. I'll watch it.
It's not as good as the first one for sure, but I think The Fly was the first Cronenberg film I saw. For some reason, it got a lot of TV play in the U.S.
Okay.
I don't know exactly why, but saw it quite a few times probably before I saw it, to where it was unedited.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the first one I saw by him was. I've seen like parts of his on TV over the years when I was younger, which is funny now because that has not happened in years and years. I can't remember the last time I ever saw any of his movies on TV, unless you count some of the more recent ones like Eastern Promises or something. But I do remember being younger, like back in, say, the early 90s, and some of his other movies popping up on TV, probably edited. But, something like Scanners would show up, or The Dead Zone. But, the first movie I saw all the way through, I couldn't even tell you. It's funny, I saw exactly one of his movies in theater, and that was Spider in 2002. That was part of film. That was the first time I went to the Atlantic Film Festival. That was a featured movie. And at the time, I knew his reputation, but hadn't seen too much of his work. This was 2002. At that time, I'd probably only seen Videodrome, maybe. Or maybe Existence, too. I was already up. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Spider's kind of underrated, I think.
Yep. It's his last, truly, his kind of movie before he went more mainstream with the other stuff. Although I guess Cosmopolis is kind of weird, but I found it so boring. I kind of checked out during it.
I did not like that movie.
No, I didn't like it either.
I may have mentioned oh man, I don't know why I'm blanking on things. The Strange Method. No,
it's Dangerous Method.
Dangerous Method. The Freud.
Yeah.
About Freud. That's a really great film if you haven't seen that one.
Freud and Carl Jung. Carl Jung or whatever. Yeah, I keep meaning to watch it. Got Keira Knightley in it, and I love her. So.
Yeah, she's great. I like that a lot. I liked his newest film. I liked a lot. I can't think of the name right now, but.
Okay. Wait a second. I had that up. It's 2014 Maps to the Stars.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either. I guess I was kind of cooled on it after seeing the other one.
I was too, man. Cosmopolis is not good. But.
Yeah. So yeah, Robert Pattinson again, but John Cusack's in there and a few other people. But yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah,
I always love Cronenberg, but it's always that early run that I love so much, the 70s and 80s especially. Up to about Existence, I guess. Just really unique filmmaker that's obviously influenced people since, but at the time when he was making it, there was really nobody else like him. More or less, I mean, body horror might have existed before him, but he perfected it, we'll say. Stuff and just telling really interesting stories. Videodrome is not a long movie. It's not too complex, but in a way it's very complex. It's just, I really, I get a lot out of watching it, rewatching it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This movie I really enjoy revisiting and stuff. And yeah, I often think of it sort of as his signature film.
Sure. Not
necessarily best, but maybe best example of what Cronenberg is all about as a filmmaker in a lot of ways. But
yeah, sadly enough, his wife just passed away. I think this past year, and
yeah, I heard about that.
She was, I believe, a costume designer for many of his movies.
Yep, yeah, she was.
So
yeah,
that's really unfortunate.
I don't know what his son's been doing. I mean, his son did a movie a few years ago. I don't know if he's going to do any more. And it was very kind of like his father's style. It wasn't bad.
It was good, yeah.
It was pretty good. It was an interesting idea that seemed to really fit with the whole Cronenberg idea factory. But yeah, let us know what you think of other Cronenberg movies. Those watching, you know, if you guys have a favorite or anything like that, or if there's any you really want to see again, or revisit, or that you never got around to checking out. You haven't gotten around to checking out this one. As usual, we had to do our full spoilers and stuff. But to that point, it's still not totally spoiled because it's still something you just really have to see. You know, we can't do it justice by describing it anyway. It's so weird. So we would totally recommend checking this movie out.
Absolutely. If you haven't seen it, hopefully you haven't watched this whole thing with all the
yeah, as you said, we had to do our spoilers, but yeah, especially if you like dark surrealism, this is a wonderful example. And James Woods fits into the environment so well. It's a really good character for him. It's a fairly short watch. It's about an hour 27 minutes. You know, it's not a big thing to digest. But at the same time, because of its themes and the ideas it presents, and rabbit hole, if you want to look into stuff about media studies and the theories of Marshall McLuhan, that'd be, you know, it's a cool avenue to take.
Sure.
Always makes me want to get a little deeper into that stuff and read my copy of Gutenberg Galaxy, which I've put off reading for years. I mean, yeah, probably there's parts that get a little too deep for me, but yeah, just for those that don't know, it might be a little interesting knowing about at least the broad strokes of him, Global Village, and the way he foresaw media, and basically, as we said, predicted so much what we're dealing with now, like with the internet and all it entails, and YouTube, and also making videos and content, and the way we absorb it. The medium is the message. It's all interesting stuff. He was definitely, as I said, one of Canada's premier intellectuals, and just a really smart, interesting guy with a really great grasp of the world and some really interesting ideas, which led to influencing a different sort of interesting person in Cronenberg. Make this little movie, but Cronenberg has been known as like the Franz Kafka of film, which I think is really fitting. If you know anything about, say, Kafka, a great writer. You know, Kafka wrote, among many things, he wrote The Metamorphosis, which you can see right in The Fly. The Fly is almost like a retelling of The Metamorphosis, just, you know, slightly tweaked into a more sci-fi thing and stuff. So yeah, I don't think it would surprise anybody to know that I'm actually a big fan into Kafka. I really like Kafka. I like his works. Very interesting writer. I love the movie version of his unfinished novel, The Trial, 1962, Orson Welles. It's such a bleak, great movie. And if you watch it again, you watch something like you watch the movie version of The Trial, I swear there's elements in there that Cronenberg would use in his movies. It's got that bleak, stark, otherworldly feel to it. Really great movie. So yeah, so like a lot of movies, they have their influences and their origins and starting points and stuff, and I like tracing them back and being able to tell people about them. It's one of the things I like about this show and stuff. So yeah, if any of that's news to you, you might want to check some of it out, particularly McLuhan, of course. But yeah, I guess we're gonna wrap because you were hoping maybe to get out to see a movie tonight if it's not too late for you.
Yeah, I hope to.
Yeah, so I don't want to tie you up too much longer, just going over stuff we've already talked about. So I think that's probably going to do it. You think so? Okay, so yeah, thanks a lot, guys. That was Videodrome. Let us know again about your thoughts on Videodrome and James Woods and Cronenberg and all that stuff, and any other random stuff you want to talk about, of course. Next week is Halloween, I think. So I guess we're going to take that off to attend to Halloween business.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. I guess we can discuss that after the show.
Yeah, so maybe next week we'll just maybe do it on Wednesday, perhaps. We'll talk about that. But I don't think we'll probably do it Halloween night. I mean, I don't think either of us would really be in the mood to do one on Halloween night. Halloween's not really a big deal for me anymore like it used to be, but I still try to do some other stuff. And I don't know, as much as I love talking movies, I don't know if I'd really be in the mood to do a show and stuff, and you probably have stuff to do. So it seems unlikely that we'll do one Halloween night. I don't think people will mind too much because, again, other people probably have their own things going on that night. But maybe we will try to at least get something done for that week. We don't like losing a full week. We didn't want to lose last week, but, you know, circumstances just sort of conspired against us, and it didn't work out. But either way, we will be back fairly soon with whatever we're going with. We don't know, but we'll talk about that. probably have at least one more dark movie in us, whether it's pre or after Halloween. You know, it still fits. And then maybe we'll move on to something different. But we'll let you know. Stay tuned to the Twitter feed and all that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, guys.
So thanks a lot. I'm the Pocket Dimension. I'm Cole. That's Jay. We thank you, as always, for watching, and looking forward to seeing you again really soon. Have a good one. Peace out.
Thanks.